Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're doing It Came From the Network. The topic of this It Came From the Network, we're not going to go on our theme for April just yet, because today is a very special day. As I'm recording this and releasing this, hopefully before the end of the day, it is April 9th, which makes that my good friend, the American Samurai's birthday. So for this, I'm going to do a show that the American Samurai requested as kind of my birthday gift to him. So with that being said, happy birthday, my friend. Here's to many more. I'm going to put a link to his YouTube channel in the description. Please go subscribe to him. He makes some really cool stuff. He makes me jealous with all of the cool things that he picks up, with all the different wrestling DVDs and comic books he gets, and some of the cool toys he gets. I seen today he got a Man-at-Arms / Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles one. I'm looking forward to that unboxing of that, but that looked pretty cool. But anyway, I digress. So this is for our friend the American Samurai, and as you may have guessed by the thumbnail and the name of this, we're going to be reviewing WWF Supertape Volume 3. This is another one of the old Coliseum video releases that has made its way onto Peacock. So with that being said, if you haven't seen any of my videos before, I do grade everything on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. We're going to jump right into it. We get introduced to our hosts for the show, which is Sean Mooney and Lord Alfred Hayes, and they're kind of in a green screen cockpit setting. For most of the show, Alfred Hayes has his back to us where he's piloting the plane, supposedly. Kind of an interesting moment in time where we had Alfred representing the 80s and Mooney representing the 90s, or at least the early part of the 90s, coexisting with each other. I believe this tape came out in 91. I might be wrong on the exact date, but it does seem, with what's on here, that matches up. From that, we go right into 2 back-to-back commercials for Hasbro toys. And if you remember the Hasbro figures, they kind of have what the WWE calls their retro figure line now, which is a sort of version of the Hasbros. They were about yay big, about 3.5 inches or so, and they were really cool. And obviously you can see the picture here. I don't know why I'm showing you that, and a lot of you already know what Hasbro figures are anyway, but they were really cool. I thought they were a step down from the LJN. I really love the LJN line, but these gave you more options. They were more movable, so while you gave a little bit with them, you gained a little bit with. That being said, we're going to jump right into our first match of the tape. We have the Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich, going up against Mr. Perfect. These two had what I would consider a really good feud during the time frame, and it was one of the ones I really enjoyed. I used to like all the matches they had together. Mr. Perfect is just exactly what he sounds. He's one of the best in-ring talents there's ever been. Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich, of the famous Von Erich clan. Unfortunately, this is a bit later in his career where he wasn't as good as he was earlier in his career. No knock on him because he's still pretty good here. And for a man that only has 1 foot at the time of this recording, or at the time this was recorded, he put on a hell of a match. That being said, I don't think this is their best match. I've definitely seen better matches of theirs. Mr. Perfect does get the win by a count out, which we're going to see kind of a theme here of the finishes to these. I gotta say, I liked it. I've seen better. It was somewhat short, especially for some of the matches on here that are longer for no apparent reason, in my opinion. I'm gonna give this one a 3. Our next highlighted match is Jimmy Superfly Snooka going up against the Barbarian, and this is what I mean. You have a match with the Texas Tornado and Mr. Perfect, and that's given about 7 or 8 minutes, and then you have the Snooka and Barbarian match that's given about 13 minutes. I would like to see those inverted, because I think with more time, Perfect and Von Erich could have put on a better match. Whereas the longer Snooka and Barbarian go, no knock on either man, the worse their match is going to be. At this point, again, Snooka is past his prime. Barbarian, I think, is really good. I just don't think that either of the two could pull off a long-form match. And I always like Barbarian more as a tag team wrestler, either in the Powers of Pain or the Faces of Fear. I thought they were both great tag teams. I like Barbarian himself. I think he's a good wrestler, and Snooka's a great wrestler too. Barbarian picks up the win here with his feet on the ropes. Again, pay attention to the finishes. We're going to have a theme when I get to the end of this that I want to talk about. I want to say this is probably not my least favorite match on the card, but my second to the least favorite match. So in other words, it's just barely above my least favorite match. Again, I'm going to give this one a 2. Next up, we had a very interesting match, and one that when I seen it was on here, I was very excited to watch, and that's Tugboat versus Earthquake, which if you know me and you've known my videos, I've talked ad nauseum about how much I enjoy the Natural Disasters as a tag team. Earthquake and Typhoon. Typhoon is Tugboat, that's his heel version, who he also goes on to become the Shockmaster, which is what he's most famous for now. But I really like these guys, and these guys are two massive humans, but they can move and they can wrestle. Earthquake specifically. Earthquake I really love, and I love the fact that he's starting to get more respect. I just mentioned this on another video I did where he was on. I think the Dark Side of the Ring is really bringing people around to remembering how good Earthquake was. I always enjoyed him. I loved his character. And like I said, I loved the tag team of Earthquake and Typhoon. And I think Tugboat was good too. I liked him as kind of that friend of Hulk Hogan role. We've seen that a lot back in this time, whether it be Brutus Beefcake, Hillbilly Jim, Tugboat. We had a lot of people that fell into that Hogan's friend role, which is not a bad role to be in, but, you know, it was what it was. Ultimately, we get to the end where Dino Bravo comes out and Jimmy Hart get involved. Jimmy Hart was managing both of these guys. At the time, Earthquake was brought in as like Dino Bravo's partner, I guess, against the Ultimate Warrior in their feud. That ends them getting disqualified, giving Tugboat the win here. I'm going to give this one a 4. I really enjoyed this. Like I said, I could be biased on this because of how much I enjoy both men. And here's another thing. You have two 400-pounders throwing drop kicks in this match. How often do you see that? I thought it was really good. Next up, we have what I would consider my least favorite match in the card. We have the Demolition, all three, Axe, Smash, and Crush, going up against the Legion of Doom, Hulk and Animal, and the Ultimate Warrior. And here's where it goes off the rails. I love the Legion of Doom. I love the Road Warriors. Everybody does. I like Demolition a lot. I think Demolition's a great tag team, highly underrated. I think too often they get written off as a Road Warrior ripoff team, which I think this feud is part of the reason why. Because when the Road Warriors came in and they were the Legion of Doom, Demolition was pushed to the back and kind of ignored. They were kind of made to be second-class citizens, where they were the ones that established themselves in the WWE. I've seen other matches. They have another 6-man match on a Saturday night's main event that's close to this time frame. I think it's the same year. It's a better version of this. This is particularly boring and bad. It's another long match that shouldn't have been long. This could have probably been shaved down to about 5-6 minutes and been good and exciting. However, we see a lot of shoulder blocks. If you like seeing clotheslines, this is your match because there's probably 140 clotheslines in the match. And that might be a little bit of an overstatement, but it's probably not that far off. For everyone that talks bad about the Young Bucks throwing 100 super kicks, go back and watch this and watch these guys between both teams throw 100 clotheslines, and maybe you'll appreciate the super kick more. I don't know. I didn't like this. Ultimately, the Warrior and the Legion of Doom pick up the win here. I'm giving this one a 2. That's followed up with a promo with the Legion of Doom, Hulk, and Animal, which is always great. The Legion of Doom, especially Hulk, had a way of being serious but throwing comedy in there and being ridiculous and then having that over-the-top style that just made everything interesting. This was all of the best parts of, let's say, a Randy Savage and a Hulk Hogan promo rolled up into one. That's followed up with somewhat of a rematch, the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors going up against Demolition. This time it's just Smash and Crush. I believe Axe had left the company at this time because he wasn't with them at ringside, and I like this better. This match was paced better. It had better psychology. Like I said, I don't know where the disconnect on the first one was. There was more of a move variety here. This felt more like a tag team match of consequence. I rather enjoyed this. This is the kind of match when I was a kid that I said I would have wanted to see the Road Warriors face Demolition when they were in two different companies. This is what I was looking for, a match like this. Ultimately, the Road Warriors, the Legion of Doom, pick up the win here. I'm giving this one a 3. And as you notice, like I said, this is why Demolition feels like they were second class, because almost every match they had with the Road Warriors, if they didn't outright lose it cleanly, they only won because they cheated. And that's a shame, because Demolition was great. That's followed up with Lord Alfred Hayes' highlight match, which he goes over the match and talks about the moves and misnames some of the moves. We have a very, very young Shane Douglas going up against a wrestler called the Black Demon, or at least I think that's what his name was, because they didn't say it here, but remembering that gimmick and the style of gear he's wearing, you may see it here. If you know, and I'm saying it's wrong, let me know down in the comments, but I think it was the Black Demon is what they called him, or whoever would wear that role. Might have just been a ninja or something like that. But anyway, I digress. This was kind of a highlight to show off Shane Douglas, which was kind of interesting because he was only there for about 6 months to a year. I don't remember the exact time frame, but he was definitely a good up-and-coming white meat babyface in this. Obviously, Shane Douglas picks up the win. I'm giving this one a 3. It was a good highlight for him. That's followed up with a singles match between 2 tag team specialists of the time. We have Marty Jannetty going up against Paul Roma from Power and Glory. Roma has Hercules with him. Unfortunately, Shawn Michaels isn't with Jannetty because Shawn Michaels was injured at the time. I don't know if it was kayfabe or not. Might have just been suspended. And I remember back to when these two teams were wrestling each other. I always liked Power and Glory versus the Rockers. I thought it was a good matchup. I like Power and Glory as a team. They had a good chemistry together. Unfortunately, in the stacked roster of teams like the Rockers, Demolition, the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, the Natural Disasters, which would come along a little later, the Hart Foundation, all these different teams, they kind of got pushed to that second and maybe even third tier of teams, but they were a good team. I enjoyed them. This is a really fun match. Ultimately, Roma picks up the win with help from Hercules, because of course he would. They're the heels. That's what heels do. I'm going to give this one a 3. I thought it was enjoyable. Next up, we're given a video of a family called the Humphreys family, and they got to pick a match for the show, which is kind of interesting. I don't know if that was kayfabe or they were given a list of matches and they could pick one to be on here. But what they pick is Ted DiBiase versus the Big Boss Man, which, thinking about it at the time, if I was a fan and I was given a choice, that might be a match I would have picked too, because you have one of the bigger baby faces at the time, the Big Boss Man, and one of the big heels at the time, Ted DiBiase. Makes sense to throw them against each other. This was another good match, but here's where we start to go back to the theme from earlier. At the end of the match, Boss Man gets disqualified because he grabs Virgil and brings Virgil into the ring, which is kind of weird, and I know it's different, and looking back at these times nowadays you could get away with pretty much anything in the ring, but I don't remember this ever being a disqualification. I remember there were plenty of matches where Hogan would bring Bobby Heenan into the ring and chase him around, or whoever was fighting one of Jimmy Hart's men would bring Jimmy Hart into the ring and body slam him, or they would go after Fuji or whoever it would be. So it was kind of odd that was a disqualification, which obviously gives DiBiase the win here, which makes me think, would the Humphreys family really want to see Boss Man lose to DiBiase? Obviously, they want the good guy to win here. They would have wanted a match where Boss Man won. I digress. Again, like I said, we get that theme again where the ending is a little bit wonky. Like, we have countouts, we have disqualifications, and I'll get more to that at the end again, as I promised. The only clean matches we have is Demolition getting beat cleanly so far, and Shane Douglas squashing a jobber, basically. I'm going to give this match a 3. Like I said, I thought it was good. I think the ending was a little bit weird. Then we get a highlight package called the Outrageous Hits, which is basically everybody doing their finisher mixed in with some high impact moves like crossbodies or really vicious looking clotheslines or really great looking drop kicks. It's one of the things that, with the way wrestling is now, you forget just how impactful a great drop kick is unless you see someone like Okada or Orton do it, or a great clothesline, how impactful and how great that looks when it's done right, or even just a power slam. This was a cool little package, really quick hits, Kind of neat that they fit The Undertaker in here, because he had to have just debuted when they made this. So it's pretty cool that they brought that in. Last but not least, we get to the final match on the VHS cassette, or whatever you want to call it. The video, it originally was a VHS cassette. We have Jake the Snake Roberts going up against Mr. Perfect. So Mr. Perfect, double duty on the disc, much like Demolition and the Legion of Doom, which again makes sense. Mr. Perfect's one of the big heels of the time, multiple time Intercontinental Champion, and we get a match of two guys that are probably in the top 5 of wrestlers that should have won the World Championship but never did. This was really fun. This is probably my favorite match of the card. This and Tugboat versus Earthquake, which I really liked as well, for different reasons, and these are two totally different matches, which just goes to show you wrestling can be a smorgasbord. You could get a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and you can like it all. I'm not the kind of person that's going to sit here and go, I don't like this match because they didn't spam 16 finishers, or I'm not going to totally throw away a match because they did spam 16 finishers. If it makes sense and the match is fun, I like it. If it doesn't make sense, the match gets boring, I don't. I thought this was a really good match. Ultimately, as you may have guessed, it ends with a disqualification when Heenan gets involved. Jake picks up the win here. I'm giving this one a 4. Overall, this was pretty up and down. There were some matches that I think were on the bad side. The 6-man Demolition versus Road Warriors and the Ultimate Warrior. Jimmy Snooka versus Barbarian that went a little bit long. Most of the matches were kind of what you would expect from WWE at the time, which is kind of why some of these Coliseum videos aren't the greatest, because, and this is what I wanted to bring up, when you're showing these quote-unquote house show matches, you're not going to get clean finishes, because they save the clean finishes for something special like a pay-per-view or Saturday night's main event. Just because they taped at Toronto or Philly or Boston or Madison Square Garden doesn't mean that it was a special show. That match was the same match they would have had if they had it in Madison Square Garden. They would have had it in Providence, Rhode Island. They would have had it in Wheeling, West Virginia. They would have had it in Richmond, Virginia, and all up and down the coast with pretty much the same ending or a variation of that until they got to the blow-off. I also understand why they didn't put pay-per-view matches on these mostly, because obviously they sold the pay-per-views as VHS cassettes themselves. So I understand why they did it. At times it makes it a little bit questionable for content, especially over and over and over again, but that's just a little bit nitpicky. I gotta say I do enjoy this, and most of the Coliseum videos, even if the matches aren't great, for the time capsule that they are and the characters you get to see, they're worth going back and checking out. This is probably on the mid side of it. Overall, I'm going to give the show a 3. I thought it was good, not great, but I would recommend checking these out. If you're not familiar with the old Coliseum videos, I think they're under WWE Home Video in Peacock, but for those of us that are old enough, or those of us that are tape collectors, or as my friend the American Samurai, who's got some DVDs of these old Coliseum videos, it's pretty cool to go back and watch these and seeing those time capsules of that time when WWF was blowing up nationally and becoming one of the biggest things in the world. So I really did enjoy this. Like I said, I give it a 3. I do recommend going back and checking these out, even if for nothing else, getting to see some of the legends here. I mean, on this we have one of the legendary Von Erichs, Mr. Perfect, Jimmy Snooka, which I know, he's got the thing leaning over his head, much like Chris Benoit, Barbarian, Earthquake, Tugboat, Demolition, Legion of Doom, The Ultimate Warrior, which you could love or hate The Ultimate Warrior. I've never really been a fan of his, and as knowing what he became as a person, still not a fan. I don't wish to speak really badly of him because he's no longer with us. Seeing a very young Shane Douglas, which is really cool. Marty Jannetty, Paul Roma. I mean, there's some cool people here. DiBiase and Bossman, Jake the Snake Roberts. Getting to see all of these wrestlers in their prime, or in the case like Shane Douglas, very early in his career before he would become the franchise. It's really cool going back and watching that. So again, I would recommend this. Much like I'm recommending going to that link down there for Bucky749, which is my friend the American Samurai's channel. He's got some really cool content over there. Check him out, give him a follow, and usually when we get to the end here, I ask you to leave a comment on my video. But what I'm going to do since it's his birthday, I want you to go over to his channel, check out a video you may like, whatever video it may be, whether it be one of his unboxings, whether it be him just talking about something. Check it out, leave a comment there, tell him happy birthday, George sent you. That's what I want you to do for me. I don't want you to comment on mine. Well, you can comment on my video if you want, but I also want you to go over to his channel, give him a happy birthday shout out. Let's make this a really good birthday for him, show him all the love, because he's a really good friend, he's a really good person, and like I said, I think he deserves all the love he's going to get. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and you've been watching It Came From the Network.